Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and we're sitting down to talk about Mass Effect because BioWare has greenlit a television show for this franchise, and wait till you see the staff that's going to be heading this thing up. You are going to get whiplash, I promise you. We're also going to talk about how BioWare has reconfirmed, emphasis on reconfirmed, we'll talk about that later in the video, on Dragon Age: The Veilguard not getting DLC. Heads are down as they're focusing on the next Mass Effect game. But more than anything, I wanted to talk about what was going on here on N7 Day. BioWare did post in advance that it was going to be a more quiet N7 Day because they just launched the Veilguard. And quite frankly, I think they kind of read the room and understood no one was going to be super excited about anything Mass Effect in light of the Dragon Age: The Veilguard launch, and probably wanted to take a year to regroup, gather themselves, and maybe ramp things up next year, which I think if you're a business, this was probably the best call you can make. They did confirm that there is an expedition for No Man's Sky featuring Mass Effect. I haven't played No Man's Sky in years. I don't plan to play it again, but I know this is pretty cool for a lot of people who are hopping into that game, and you get a little bit of Mass Effect over there. And over on Destiny, they brought back some of the cosmetics for Mass Effect, but nothing in the form of big teasers that are going to give us an idea of what's happening with the plot of the next Mass Effect game. So we'll probably talk about that sometime next year. But for now, let's get into what BioWare is doing with Mass Effect. Beyond moving on from the Veilguard, they have confirmed through Variety that the Mass Effect TV series in the works at Amazon from Fast and Furious 9 writer. Okay, let's continue on here. A Mass Effect TV series is officially in development at Amazon MGM Studios, Variety has learned exclusively. Daniel Casey is set to write and executive produce the adaptation. Karim Zrake, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, will executive produce under his Cedar Tree Productions banner, with Ari Arid and EA's Michael Gamble also executive producing. Cedar Tree is currently under an overall deal at Amazon MGM Studios. Exact plot details are being kept under wraps. It was previously reported in 2021 that Amazon was in negotiations to develop a Mass Effect TV series, but now there have been no updates on the project until now. There had also been various attempts to develop a feature film based on the games, but that project never materialized. And you may recognize that original rumor because we did cover it in the lead up to Veilguard and trying to track what was going on with Mass Effect. In the meanwhile, is that Henry Cavill actually posted on his Instagram account this script here saying secret project or just a handful of paper with random words on it. Guess you'll have to wait and see. Happy hump day all. And it's there that if people enhance the image, which they did, you would see on the script itself were many references to Mass Effect terminology, which gave it some level of legitimacy that something was in the works. This was an official teaser, if you will, that Henry was going to be involved in what was happening with Mass Effect. However, that has since gone cold, and it has now been greenlit again, according to Variety, and it is with the most interesting group of individuals I've seen. Now, Mike Gamble being involved is great news, right? This guy, I think, gets Mass Effect. He's continued to try to reassure people when it comes to tone, whether it be the actual dialogue, which he said is going to be much more mature, like the original trilogy, or tone visually, which he said is going to lean more into photorealism. I think he is trying to massage concerns as best he can, but playing is believing. We'll see when we get to that launch. So his involvement is a good sign. And I think with the Fallout TV show, it's taught me to be open-minded. But look, I'm not going to sit here and cap, okay? When I see Fast and Furious 9 writer for what I think is one of, if not the best sci-fi story in gaming, and definitely one of gaming's best trilogies, handling Mass Effect, and on top of that, you have Ari Arid, who is just on the producer role for the awful Borderlands movie. Keep in mind, this is not Avi Arid. I almost made this mistake. This is Ari Arid. Avi Arid, however, was connected to those horrible decisions surrounding, say, Spider-Man in the past. Like with Spider-Man 3, including a ton of villains in the Sam Raimi trilogy, which ended in, I think, a lackluster conclusion, although very meme-filled. That was because of him. However, Ari Arid has arguably just as bad of a track record, known for meddling in creative decisions around Marvel itself, but also serving as the producer for many of Marvel's worst films. Some of these are guilty pleasures, but look, I mean, when your highest rated movie is a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes and Ghost in the Shell, and your lowest is the god-awful Borderlands movie, and you attach to yourself all these other ones in Ghost Rider, which I thought was cool as a kid, but I don't think it's aged well, The Punisher from 2004, and your best movie really being one you executive produced in Iron Man, which got barely 8 stars, and as someone who's seen that movie, I don't know, I didn't think it was bad, but I also didn't think it was amazing. I just can't help but feel a little concerned at the selection of talent for what is a interweaving galactic plot of massive proportions. It's not like his name turns stuff into gold, and I don't want to oversell one person's role in an entire production, but I can't look at this and go, yeah, awesome track record. Kareem Zrake has a much more impressive track record comparatively speaking, but it does bring into frame one element that I think gamers may find a bit concerning, particularly if you're a BioWare fan and played Veilguard. You'll see here, best known for things like National Treasure, we love that, but really, it's Daredevil. That's the standout one, producing what I think is one of the best TV shows out there, especially in Marvel, but you'll see had a hand in a lot of the recent Marvel TV show pushes. You see Jessica Jones there, you see the Punisher there, which is excellent, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Jericho's there, which I know a lot of people really enjoy. I know nothing about, but TV's not my specialty. I can only identify some of these, but what you're noticing here is a consistency in Marvel. And this was one of the big problems we saw when it came to Dragon Age, was that it felt very, for lack of a better term, Disneyified, Marvel writing inspiration, Pixar writing inspiration, which works well in their own respective pockets. I'm not a Marvel hater like many people are out there. Like, for example, Deadpool Wolverine was excellent, but there are some recent things in Marvel's push on Disney Plus, like Loki, that I thought was excellent. So I don't see Marvel and turn tail, but it does start to depict a level of what talent is BioWare seeing as appealing for their Mass Effect show. And when you look at their recent video game, I'm not going to draw a massive conclusion here, but more so I think it's important information to create proper expectations. Again, what I care about is quality, but when I think Mass Effect, I don't think trying to go get Marvel talent personally. Going back to a good example, with Fallout, you had Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy tapped on the shoulder for the Fallout TV show, and this worked really well because of the sci-fi roots there that you'd find through Westworld, you'd find through Interstellar. Obviously, Jonathan Nolan has a spectacular track record, so there was also that attached to it. So I do think quality talent goes a very long way, as we've seen. In fairness, Daniel Casey also did work on 10 Cloverfield Lane, which a lot of people did enjoy. So again, I will try to keep an open mind, but this combination of people, Michael Gambel withstanding, does not breed a strong level of confidence within me. The real question is, what story do they want to tell here? Do they want to retell the original trilogy? Do they want to tell an original story within the Mass Effect universe? I think the latter option is the best choice that you can do. I think BioWare is already taking somewhat of a big risk when you look at what they're doing with the next Mass Effect game, right? They're going back to N7. You see Liara. There are going to be tendrils now connected to the original trilogy, which many of us hold in high regard. I think if you want to strengthen it in the level of attention it's going to get, tying it to the original trilogy in some way makes sense. But there are ways for BioWare to do this without, I think, stepping all over the toes of characters like Commander Shepard, Garrus Vakarian, and so on that we've come to know and love. Ways they can do this is covering the sort of lead up into Mass Effect 1. One such selection for me would actually be the First Contact War, right? This can serve as a prequel, as a lead up into Mass Effect 1. You basically have this conflict that occurred almost 30 years before the first game takes place, and it's about, making contact with that first Mass Effect relay and how the Turians responded, and there was a conflict between the two races. And I think you could build out the lore in a really interesting way in a TV show that kind of serves to build up what leads into the Mass Effect trilogy without stepping all over it, because then you have to think, if you're BioWare in this position, you can then tell people, go check out the game to continue that story from where the show left off. There is also a gap between Mass Effect 3 and presumably where the next Mass Effect takes place. There was also that jump with Andromeda. There was that leftover DLC that never happened with Andromeda with the Quarians. And do they pick up there? I don't think so. I don't know if that would make a lot of sense. But this could be the connecting tissue between the end of the original trilogy and the start of a new Mass Effect trilogy, whatever that may be. There's a lot of thoughts I have on it, but ultimately, I can't act like I have complete confidence here in the staff that they have amassed. At least with Fallout, like, there was a good match there. There were true Fallout fans on the case. But look, again, I'll keep an open mind until I at least see the trailer and go from there. But on paper, when it comes to staff, well, just a touch concerned on some things here. But nonetheless, let's talk a bit about what's going on with Dragon Age: The Veilguard DLC, which if you watch this channel, you might already know, but I still have some extended thoughts on this. BioWare has no plans for Dragon Age: The Veilguard DLC as it turns its attention to Mass Effect 5. While BioWare didn't offer any follow-up details in Rolling Stone's report, IGN understands that the studio plans to support The Veilguard with quality of life improvements and a handful of smaller content updates. We've reached out to EA for more details. But yes, in that Rolling Stone interview, BioWare has confirmed the focus is on Mass Effect 5. If you watched my preview where I did interview Veilguard's director, it was confirmed there that Veilguard was not going to get DLC. So, just a little self-plug there to remind people who got it first, even though no one chose to cover it at the time. Interesting decision there. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, that is the word on the street here, is that there is no Veilguard DLC. My thoughts, great choice. I really think it is a great choice because Veilguard does put a bow on it. I think you could just drop the series there, quite frankly. I'm not advocating fully for that because maybe there are fans out there who want to see more, but I think you could just straight up end it there. It wasn't like what happened with the end of Inquisition where it set up Trespasser pretty clearly. There was definitely a sense of finality to Veilguard for those who haven't played it and are wondering, where I don't think there was really room for DLC unless they started a whole brand new story from there. But also, I don't think the numbers have been crazy for Veilguard. Like, I think it would be tough to warrant it as a success, but I also wouldn't say it's a failure. I'd put it in the fine category. And I think for a game that's doing just fine, it would be silly to invest more resources in what was a very chaotic game launch, kind of take your lumps and potentially your wins that you got along the way and move on to the project that people probably have many more concerns for in Mass Effect, where that is the big one, right? This is like Bethesda going from Starfield to Elder Scrolls 6, where it's like, okay, there were some misses here, and now you're going to the project many of us are much more invested in. What are you doing after everything that's transpired for this game that we're highly anticipating? And so I think BioWare is in a very similar position, and it's wise just to put everyone in on that project. I just think if you're looking at it from a business angle, putting more resources, money, time into Veilguard DLC is, number one, I think extending the pain. I really do. I think BioWare's probably gone through a lot as a developer and probably just wants to move on from this and kind of get a relatively fresh start with a new project that people are at least somewhat optimistic for. But also, I don't know, if the base game isn't doing explosive numbers, then I don't think DLC is going to be the smartest play. And they seem to know that going into launch. I mean, they had the pre-order numbers early, so I'm sure that's a big reason why heading into launch, they're like, we're just trying to deliver a complete game. And I can give them credit for that, for making a nice self-aware decision, all things considered. Because I look at like what's happened with Suicide Squad, where they just do not staunch the bleeding at all and continue to release awful looking characters into that game that it just like, I already tried season 1 and just saw, hey, what's happening with Joker? And I see some of the characters they're adding in there. I'm like, how, why, what are you, how is this possible? So I like that at least Veilguard had the self-awareness to say, you know what, we're going to take our W's where we can. Let's move along to Mass Effect, where that's the big one. And if I see Dragon Age again, y'all, I'm really hoping it's in the form of a Legendary Edition, which BioWare has not shut down. They recently commented on this, saying that never say never, but only like 20 people have worked on Eclipse. And I get that. I understand that Dragon Age is a little more complicated to probably make a Legendary Edition for, where Mass Effect was all on Unreal Engine. BioWare has hopped between engines with each of these entries in the Dragon Age franchise. And of course, you had Frostbite with something like Dragon Age Inquisition. But if they can figure it out, man, I would be all over that. And I know a lot of people would too, because we get to go back to Origins, which is not fully accessible on modern platforms, and I would love for it to be. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, it's an interesting time for BioWare. We're going to continue to track them, continue to cover them, because, of course, I am still invested in seeing what happens, but it's more from a fascination perspective and an old fan perspective, and rather like just actively buying into the idea that they're going to fully turn it around. They kind of have to prove it now, big time. So we'll see, but that's what's going on with the Mass Effect TV show. Having Amazon behind it could be encouraging or not, depending on how you look at it. Fallout makes it very encouraging, but then something like Yakuza made it not encouraging. I watched some of that, and I was like, this isn't very good at all. So I don't know if it's a guaranteed slam dunk, but if I'm just looking at the staff, as I've said multiple times this video, not feeling super hopeful there. But I do like the call that they're making with Veilguard to just kind of close the book there and move on to the next Mass Effect and get that done as quickly as possible. Because if numbers aren't looking good for BioWare, then the quicker they get that game done, probably the better for their future. But we'll see where everything goes. We'll be here to talk about it nonetheless. Looking forward to seeing your thoughts down below on what you feel about the Mass Effect TV show, and Dragon Age of Veilguard not getting any DLC. So fire away. Other than that, I'll catch all of you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.